So Dennis, every day I come across more and more people who insist that it's all right to stay in a toxic relationship than it is to get out and get a divorce. But divorce, commonly known, even in the most progressive of cultures, is still a taboo. Yeah. Even in countries where you're really, really progressive, open-minded, liberal, whatever label you want to put on it, like Scandinavia, Europe, America. Well, America is very conservative. Even there, the moment you divorce, it's like a red flag. And a lot of these countries also make it more and more difficult. Another interesting thing which happened in the United States of America and Britain in the recent decade is the law that even if you just live together, not married, that would be considered a partnership. And if you separate, people have claims on each other's properties without even actually getting married. So what they've done is really interesting. That if you're living together, that's really like a marriage, and it'll be treated like a marriage. So the side effect of that was people also stopped living together. Getting married legally is one thing, and just being together so this is really either people are staying away from relationships, and once they get into relationships, it's more and more difficult just to get out. Like you were saying the other day, $15,000 each person for a divorce. Yeah, so that's $30,000 for a divorce. So a lot of people stay in a marriage because they cannot afford to get out. So
that's correct. Yeah.
As an executive coach, as a personality coach, as somebody who works with people with trouble in your area, what's your experience, man? Why do people stay in those? Why do people get into shit relationships, and why did they stay there?
Well, I think people get into relationships for the same reason all of us do, is, we want companionship, we want partnership. I mean, I think, being coupled is part of the human experience. It doesn't have to be, but I do think it is a strong part of that. I think that there's a lot of cultural factors, and I will even say in business, it's a status, right? I mean, it's kind of like you trust somebody more if they're in a relationship. I don't know why that is. It just seems to kind of be the way it is. So I think that I'll just speak to the United States and to the Western world. I think in the United States we have a 62% first-time divorce rate. The interesting thing is most people that get a divorce, they'll end up being married a total of 3 times. So and each time they get married, their rate of divorce goes up exponentially. I mean, not just a few little points, massive. And I've worked with a number of divorce attorneys as clients they're clients of mine over the years. And the interesting thing is what I can surmise, FQ, is I think in at least the Western world, we've litigated ourselves out of love. And that I want that to set in. We've litigated ourselves out of love, and just meaning that it is that the cost. I think most people just don't feel that the cost is worth they don't get the return on investment for the cost and of a possible divorce. So I think in some ways, I'll just speak to the United States. I think we're undergoing. The United States has been looked at for the last several years as like this hyper politically correct place, and I think what we're seeing now, especially with everything at all being considered racist, now you're seeing kind of the genericizing. I don't know the term, but I guess everything is becoming more and more generic. And I think our relationships are becoming that way as well. And so when you have to have a contract, when you have to have a contract to get married, to just simply to take and divide personal assets, I don't know. I mean, for me, that kind of takes the fun out of the whole love part, right? I mean, at the end of the day, a marriage contract is nothing more than a business agreement.
Fair enough, man. One request for people watching, because we are broadcasting live from multiple locations. For the best experience, please go to YouTube. A lot of your comments are coming to us as Facebook user. We don't even know who you are. That's probably in a group or someplace. So please, I request, go to either my YouTube or Dennis's YouTube and watch it from there. To get the link, you just go to my website, faisalqureshi.com or dennistyrrell.com, and from there you can spin off to our YouTube channels because Facebook does this crappy stuff with live stream. So okay, Dennis, so personally I've been through a divorce or two. When you get divorced, people come to you like, like someone's died.
Right.
And they're really like, oh my God, are you all right? I'm so sorry. And I've always said, divorce is a bad thing, but it's also the end of a horrible thing. So you should be
Right.
celebrating. If
Yeah.
you really wanted a divorce and got a divorce, it means what you were in was absolute misery. So
Yeah.
I don't know why people come and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I hope you're doing okay. Yeah, I wasn't doing okay. That's why I got a divorce. Now I'm actually
Right.
doing okay. And one movie star in Pakistan, when she got a divorce, she released a video of her dancing away on some place and saying, celebrating my freedom. And people really, really went for her jugular. And I was like, come on. If she was so happy, she wouldn't get a divorce, man. She's obviously celebrating that she's out of a crap situation. So
Right.
the society still makes it very difficult for people to get out of tricky situations. And we can. There's another side topic we can talk about some of the days. How people, if somebody passes away in your family, people who come to condole actually make it more difficult for you. Instead of saying, it's all right, man, then a better place. No, they would start crying with you, and while you're trying to heal, they would make it more difficult for you. But I'm using that as a side subject. But just like in a divorce, maybe someone's feeling shitty. They've invested 10 years in a relationship. The people would come and say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," instead of saying, "You know what? Move on, man. Start a new life." People never say that.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that many people that I know that have gone through a divorce, they have actually said in many ways it would have been easier. And I just speak to the United States. They have just said that in many ways it would have been easier had the spouse died. See, because here in the U.S., even though divorce is 62%, I mean, for the first marriages, 62%, over half.
Fuck, man.
I mean, we're basically
That's
at like
intense.
2/3, right? So what we're saying is that I guess what happens in the U.S. is that there's always some sort of judgment attached. And being I don't know, I really don't know what Islam says about divorce. I can tell you though, coming from a Christian majority country, what gets looked at is that there's a verse in the Bible that specifically said God hates divorce. It is, and then there's specifications of why you can get divorced. And I think what happens is people feel judged. We still look at marriage as though it's supposed to be forever, and when that doesn't, when you don't, until death do us part, which in many cases has been taken out of the wedding vows here in the United States. It's as long as we both shall love one another. So the death do you part portion of that has been taken out of many of the marriage vows and ceremonies. The other part is just interesting. Again, I think it gets looked at as it's some sort of a failure, as opposed to that two people just at some point just decided to kind of go in separate directions. I can assure you, growing up in a very conservative, fundamental Christian household, it was very, very, very confusing, and I was very conflicted about this topic for years. As divorce is wrong, I was taught divorce is wrong, divorce is sin. You cannot recover from it. If you get a divorce, you're not allowed to remarry in the sight of God. And so when my parents ended up getting divorced, it was very, very, very confusing. And so that's a topic I've had to wrestle with for quite a number of years now. My feelings on this topic have definitely changed. In that one, if I had to do it again, I would still be with April. However, I would not get married, because to me that is that's a contract between us and the state in order to divide assets. To me, the marriage is between us and God. The other part is that I no longer think that marriage is either one, required, or two, I don't think that it is necessarily until death do you part. I think that there are some reasons why people need to go ahead and split and get divorced so that they can each move on and have happy lives.
In many cases, divorce, the vow should be till one of us kills the other, till death do us part. Yes, one of us, or one of us drives the other to suicide.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Over the years, I've made many friends, known a lot of couples, and I'm going to really say something controversial here. 98%, it's a number I'm making up, 95 to 98% people are not happy in their relationships. And I'm going to make an even more dangerous statement. I think about 60% couples cheat on each other, even in a culture like where I am.
Okay.
And I'm talking about friends I've known globally.
Yeah.
You know what? I would say 75% people cheat on each other, yet they stay in marriages, and it's never made sense to me. But I think the reason you said, people want that. People. I'm not sure the word you used. People are scared of being judged. Now here's the thing. It's nobody's really business to judge you. You should know who you are, where you are, what you're going through. And I always say, you don't lay in my bed. You're not going into my grave. You're not paying my bills. I don't really give a shit what you think, man.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you would give me advice and say, oh, you can't do this. It's not good for you. And you're going to go home and sleep in your bed where you probably hate your wife or husband. And you're thinking exactly the same thing. And in my case, I've had a very interesting thing happen to me. When I got divorced, a lot of my friends, school friends, were no longer allowed to meet me by their wives. And it was funny because the wives knew that they needed a divorce as well. And they were just too scared that my situation would encourage them.
Right.
Would encourage my friends, their spouses, to divorce their wife because, it makes it sort of open for public. So I think we need to. I know it's a. I'm hesitating because people would immediately say anti-Islamic, anti-Christianity, against God's will, divorce. But divorce does exist in Islam, at least. Yes, it is not a favorable subject. It is not something you should do. The Quran is very clear about it that it is not a favorable act. Right. It is an act really looked down. But in situations where it's needed, it is an allowed act. And there have been cases, where Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a woman went to him and said, I want a divorce. And he asked her, why? And she said, because I don't like him. And that was reason enough for the Prophet, peace be upon him, to say, all right, get a divorce. So if a woman says, I just don't like the man, that was reason enough in my religion, in Islam, to say, it's all right. Okay. Instead of being miserable, you get a divorce. Yes, I would repeat, it is something you don't want to do. Right. It is something that's looked down upon. And another thing which I want to say is, a lot of cultures, I know Scandinavia, and even Islam, want you to be very sure before you get married. In our culture, marriage is taken like a joke. My mom would meet her mom and they would decide we should get married, and the arranged marriage bullshit. Right. But my religion, my faith says, the man and the woman to be married, they need to consent. Without their consent, it's not at all okay. So that consent basically means be very sure that you want to do it. Sure. And I know, I think Finland makes divorce very difficult. They want to make sure that you really want to get married. Okay.
See, and here's what I think is interesting is that, so like for me, I got married at 20, and when April and I got married, I don't know, we were about 5 years younger than the average. The average marriage age at that time when we got married was about 25, 26 years old. So we were 20, so we were a little bit younger. But one of the conversations we've had, and she and I have, in working with couples, one of the things that, like, I think what it comes down to, FQ, is that in many cases our expectations of the other person, or the expectation of what's going to happen with inside of a marriage or a relationship, I think the expectation is too high. And I think in many ways what happens is we expect our partner to give up a part of their humanness, right? I mean, think about it from a different perspective, is that you think about how many times you hear that, like my wife got jealous because she thought I was looking around. Listen, I am a male. I'm a male. I know females that look at males. Males look at females. There's a part of biology that I think we are expecting to just go away because we're in a committed relationship. The other thing I think is really interesting, and I don't know the average age of marriage in your part of the world. However, I do think that when we get married, regardless of the age, if you get married to somebody at 40, by the time you're 60 and you hold them to the standards of when you were 40, like that just doesn't make any sense. So like for April and I, we got married at 20. Like Like, for real. And we've been on the edge of divorce a few times. And it was simply that I think in many ways we expected, well, you made promises. And I heard myself say this. She said it too, is, well, we made promises to each other. Yeah, but I made promises when I was 20. Like, you can't still hold me to that at close to like 45 or 40, or, you're talking a long time to still hold somebody accountable to a promise they made years and years and years ago. That doesn't allow that human, that your partner who's a human, to change, to evolve, to grow. And so I think that's what ends up happening is you hear the term, oh, we just grew apart. Well, it's not necessarily that you grew apart. It's that you no longer want the same things out of life. And that's okay. I think we just need to give ourselves permission to understand that. And the other thing I want to say is, one of the things I have heard, especially since broadcasting in the Muslim world, is, oh, Dennis, you just don't understand. You don't understand how it is for a woman. Like, we're poor afterwards. Well, here in the United States, when a divorce happens, I mean, unless you're ultra rich and then none of these things apply anyway, but for the common person, the regular, average, everyday, people that get up and go to work every day and keep the economy running, most of the time, men, usually I can assure you, when I'm working with a man as a client and they tell me, oh, hey, I'm going to go ahead and get a divorce, I know that I'm going to get fired within 3 to 6 months. I know that. There is no question on that. I am going to get fired by the man. And the reason is because within 3 to 6 months and the divorce proceedings start, that man is going to be cleared out financially. So in other parts of the world, it's the woman that becomes destitute. In the United States, in many, many situations, the man has alimony to pay. The man has child support to pay. The man has all of these other, a lot of times he pays for her court, her legal fees. So it's a big decision. It's a really, really big decision. And I'm just saying, when I've had a client say to me, hey, I'm considering a divorce, I'm like, let's look at all the outcomes. Are you okay with living in an apartment? You're going to go from this big house and a nice car, you're going to sell your cars, you're going to move into an apartment and never see your kids. Let's figure out a way to work this out. Sometimes we can and sometimes we can't, but I just think that there's another side to this as well. And so before we just rush into a divorce, you absolutely have to look at the return on investment. It's a business proposition. If it wasn't a business transaction, you would not have to take and sign a contract to divide assets if and when a divorce happens.
Okay, we're throwing in our personal stories, but interesting. In between a divorce, there was a time when there was a possibility of me hooking up with a Western woman. And you said, legality, the legislature has killed love.
Yeah.
And the prime reason for me to not even consider that route was that she could just wipe me clean.
Yeah.
She could wipe me out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no chance. No way am I going to take that risk. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, other cultures where you don't have that regulation really screws the woman.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily the woman, the weaker of the two. Let's take the gender out of it. Like in the U.S., whoever has more money, gets wiped out. So over here, more than 90% of the time, it's the man who's the breadwinner. It's the man who owns the house. It's the man who's got the bank balance. So the woman, 99% of the time, is out clean on the street. So Khushbu was making a couple of good comments. I'm going to throw it here. This one, and I'm putting it in here right now because it's exactly what I'm saying. They stay because they do not have any place to go. Okay,
yeah.
Women by sort of cultural understanding and cultural expectation are expected to be homemakers, and it's only been for the past 15, 20 years that it's all right for women to go and have a job. But 20 years ago, I would say no, it wasn't very common. So women always have the short end of the stick in a divorce because man would say thank you and screw you, walk out. And a man even now is not liable to pay anything extraordinary to the woman. All we have is a dowry, or what we call the haq meher, where a commitment from a man pay a woman at the time of marriage.
Yeah.
It's different from dowry. And interestingly, the amount set in that contract is very, very small. And if a woman was to request a larger amount, the society would say, "Oh, what a gold digger! Oh my egg!" It's really looked upon very poorly.
Yeah.
Part of a marriage contract, that amount is set. It's called meher. That in case of a divorce, or if a woman ever demands, the man has to pay her. And typically, that amount would be like 250 US, $200. And if someone, I know women who have put that amount to maybe $100,000, and they're seen very, very poorly. They joked upon and like, what a gold digger! Look at what she's done. She screwed him. People don't really see that as a fair deal because the man has so much money.
Yeah.
She should walk out with. I'm sorry. Being a man, I'm not going to say that a man should be wiped out. I'm going to take the man's favorable position of not having to pay, but still there should be something for the woman if she comes out of a relationship.
Yeah, and over here in the U.S., it's all based upon common law and case law, and unless you have a prenuptial agreement. So here we've gotten into, and it's really interesting. It's interesting that we're talking about this simply because prenuptial agreements. One of the I was hired by an organization.
Right.
To do some new hire orientation. So this group of new employees came in, and they asked me to just kind of go over everything. And one of the things, like one of the benefits of this job, was that these folks that got this job, they ended up getting a really, they would, if they completed 20 years of service, they'd get a really healthy pension. Like, it was a good pension and really good retirement setup, and especially for 20 years of work. So one of the things I told these people was, hey, like, because most of them were under the age of 30. I had out of, I want to say 25 new employees. Only two of them were married. Only two of them were married, and the rest of it. So this is how dumb it gets here. I was hired to do the new hire orientation, and what I did is my whole job was to set these folks up for success and to look at some of the ins and the outs and some of the unintended consequences of the positions that they were in, and so forth and so forth. So one of the things I told them is, everybody that was not married, I said, if you are not married and you are not in a committed relationship right now, before you get married, absolutely 100% get a prenuptial agreement. Get a prenuptial agreement. It isn't about that you have so much money now. It's about protecting your assets later on if and when things go bad. It's just setting yourself up for success. After that, fortunately, this is why I get paid ahead of time. Before I step foot onto premises, I get paid ahead of time, and the reason is because I was asked to leave. So I came back the next day after giving that part. I was 1.5 days into a 3-day training. About halfway through the second day, I was asked into the boss's office. He's like, "Hey, yeah, we're gonna have to like cancel you." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, you really offended some people." I'm like, "Offended people? What are you talking about?" "Well, you told them to get a prenuptial agreement, and that they take exception of that because it's not listed in the Bible." I'm like, "What are we talking about?"
Yeah.
Like, this is just absolutely ridiculous. So they said, and it's a long story short, is I got an extra day, and it's like, "So we're going to have to readjust your pay." I'm like, "Yeah, you're going to have to go back and read that contract, the same as your people should their marriage contracts. So you're still going to pay me, but I'm happy to leave." So that's where that ended up. And it's an interesting concept, because like, even anytime I give a new hire orientation, and most of the employees I work with, they're under the age of 30. Most of them are not married. I tell them all to get a prenuptial agreement. That's just the way things are done here. I mean, we're going to get to the point here in the United States when, let's just say, like after the marriage happens, and, each party's going to have to bring their own attorney into the, the honeymoon suite with them to make sure everything's okay and proper consent has been given and no rules have been violated and all of that kind of nonsense. So we're literally litigating love away. I don't know how else to put it. It's crazy to me.
Well, like I gave you my personal example, yes.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say here, people, you tell me people say to you that you do not understand how it happens here and there. It's the same crap everywhere, man.
It is.
Like over there, no prenup. In Pakistan,
Yeah.
we've got this prescribed, pre-designed form where we need to fill when we get married.
Okay.
And by default, the woman has the right of divorce. Does
Okay.
not have the right of divorce. There is
okay.
a question. There is a question. Well, actually, she does have the right of divorce, or not. The question: does the woman want the right of divorce? Right now, just going to give you a little background. If a couple wants to file divorce, someone has to go to your union council office and submit that I wish to begin the process of a divorce.
Okay.
Now, the man has the right to start that process. Historically, women were almost forced to scratch away the clause where they could retain the right of divorce, which meant that a woman could go to the officer and say, I wish to initiate a divorce process. So it was not there. So historically, till about 15 years ago, a woman would have to really either beg the man to give her a divorce or go to the court and go through all kinds of crap. The court would take years for the poor thing to get a divorce. Then about 15 years ago, we legislated that now if a woman goes to court and says, I want a divorce, it is a very quick process, and the judge would just listen to the man and the woman once, try to reconcile. If it doesn't work, he will say, fine, you go and get a divorce. And then she can start the process. Now, if ever a woman said, I want this right of divorce, people are like, oh, you tart, oh, you slut, you're such a bad woman,
Right.
you want the right of
Right.
divorce. But now, what I'm trying to say is it has been indoctrinated into the heads so much that I actually begged my wife who's sitting there, please take the right of divorce. And she's like, it's a bad thing.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so it has been, they've been conditioned so much. And we'll talk about divorce another way, because in Pakistan, divorce is really done in a very effed up way, whereas legally it is a beautiful way. But people
Okay.
just have been given wrong information. But that's a different topic, I think.
Sure.
Unless if you're really interested in knowing how it happens. So what I'm saying is,
I don't plan to get
social
married
pressure-
again. Yeah, I don't plan to get married again, period. And second, I guarantee you I won't be getting married in Pakistan. So none of that stuff's going to apply to me.
Dude, let me wait. Since you raised that point, let me show you this comment.
And I turn mine off because you know how sidetracked I tend to get. So
No, this one's important. Well, there was this comment which said you can be married 4 times. There you go.
yeah.
Yeah. So, dude, all you gotta do is, you know what? Come over here. Claim. You already look like it.
I don't
You've got the
have
look.
to. I don't have to. All I have to do is literally move 8 hours, an 8-hour drive north of me to a place called Colorado City. That is a fundamental Latter-day Saint complex, and there's several little these little pockets around Arizona and Utah where people they have multiple wives. It's plural marriage, and we're not just talking up to 4. We're talking like 15 in some cases. Like, dude, I'm just gonna come out and say, I am. I don't care whether somebody wants multiple wives or not, multiple husbands. All I can say is, like, I love April very dearly, and but I can assure you, I don't need another one. Trying to navigate one relationship is challenging enough for me that I certainly don't need multiple, partners at all. At the end of the day, dude, sex just isn't that, like, no big deal. You know what I mean? And it's not, I mean, if I was going to get another wife, I'm just going to come out and say it. If I was going to get another wife, it would be like somebody that knew how to do massage therapy, knew how to, like, be my psychologist. Because as far as partnership, I have all of that with April. And in fact, half the time I don't even want to hang out with myself. So I can assure you I don't want to hang out with multiple like relationship partners. Like it's just too much.
Only one person caught my comment there. I said, you got the look. It's a song, you got the look. But also, he's got the look, and guess what? He's a washer now, so he's one of us. All right, man, let's have a look at the comments, and then we call it night, yeah?
You bet.
Do we have anything interesting here?
Let's see. This is interesting. Except that instead of living unhappily together forever, it is better for two people who don't get along well to separate. Kushbu, listen, I completely agree. I think that it's just time, and I'm going to come out and say it. I think, without getting into a generational debate, I think it's going to be like between me and FQ that usually people seem to like. I just don't feel like doing it today. I think it's going to be like your generation. I truly do. It's the 30 and belows. You guys are going to try. You guys are really going to make some changes, and I hope that as time goes on. People start to look at this a little bit differently and more like what you're saying is two people that don't get along well. Listen, I was always taught that if it's two people that don't get along well, you're just not trying hard enough. And in fact, in my situation, what I was told, if you're not getting along, it's because you're not putting God first. Like that was really it. FQ gave an example of other people didn't want him around because he could influence them and make other people like put ideas into their heads. So when my parents ended up getting a divorce, I was kicked out of the religion. I was, and religion was, it was our life, everything, very, very fundamentalist. And so I got kicked out as well as my sisters. And you know why? And my sisters were much younger than me. And the reason we got kicked out is so that people didn't get ideas. And that's literally what it came down to is now. And that what they said is, well, you're a product of sin. Well, I was like 15. I didn't understand that. And so it was just that they did not want us infiltrating or infiltrating like we were, nefarious people. What a terrible word I'm using on myself. They didn't want us taking and basically trying to influence it. At that point, we were looked at as a cancer and we had to be cut out and removed so that the rest of the group stayed pure. So listen, we have to take and change a lot of our thought processes and, it just, religion, and we're going to get more into religion as the show goes on because it's a fundamental part of people's lives. But when you are a fundamentalist, you will only get disappointed. And that's all I'm going to say. Virtue to put up. Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's considered a virtue to put up with an unhappy marriage.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Especially for women. Especially if you're a woman, yes.
But do you really want to enter paradise bitter and unhappy? That just doesn't make sense to me at all.
Not a religious virtue. Not a religious virtue. It's considered a social virtue.
Got it.
Oh, she's such a good girl. She put up with that man while he beat her up for 20 years. What?
Rafia, let's see here. What's this crazy cat got to say? Is she subservient? Rafia, I have a very difficult time finding you to be subservient to anyone, love. Make your own meal. I can't be forced to cook for you.
Well, in her case, it'd be make your meal and feed me too.
Yes, okay, well.
Oh, God, I got to take this comment, man. Donna Sue, you can't have a future if you're living in hell. Yes, try to make it work, but if not, move on. I got to talk about Donna Sue. She went to university with me, man.
Oh, cool.
She's been my friend since 1982, and she's married to a very dear friend of mine. And I had a crush on her for the longest time. I'm saying
nice.
We met again, I think 3 years ago after, I think, 25 years. And some friends are so amazing that both Donna and Mike came to see us in Boston. And it was like 25 years later, nothing had changed, man. We're still buddies. So, hey, Donna.
That's awesome.
Love you, babe.
That's awesome. This is interesting.
Sorry, I
That's okay.
Yeah.
Marriage of convenience is the norm. Hanging out in a toxic relation is bad for one's health. Absolutely,
Yeah.
Muhammad. Completely agree. And I think I'm just going to come out and say I think if the divorce, if it was more, if I think Pakistan would have a higher rate of divorce if it was more equitable. I mean, we're still talking about marriage being, especially for women, we're still talking about marriage being a part of survival. And until we take that component out, I mean, I just don't think that survival should have anything to do with love. And I think you can, I don't have a problem with arranged marriages. I know plenty of people that are in, I know plenty of people in arranged marriages of some sort that are very, very, very happy. So April and I picked each other, and, we were going to conquer the world against all odds, and, that whole American romance and nonsense is what we found out all of that stuff to be. So you have to make at some point, I just think that before you consider a divorce, and I do think that there are reasons, I think you really have to take and look at what is going to be your, how will your life be afterwards? Can you take and salvage? And most of the times we can't salvage, we can't reconnect, we can't recommit to each other. Simply, and that's based on ego. Like at the end of the day, and we'll get into this in further broadcasts and episodes, but the reason people won't come back to each other comes down to ego. I'm not willing to forgive. You hurt me. For me, and I'll just come out and say it. Like, too many people that in my world are like, oh, if they cheat on me, that's a deal breaker. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, seriously? Like, you committed to this person, and the first time they make a mistake that's kind of a bigger nature, you're going to just write them off? Like, that says more about you being a loser than anything else. Like, and that says more about your insecurities than anything else. I don't think an affair, to me, and in my world, an affair, cheating, anything like that, it's all contextual. It depends. And I understand that there are circumstances in which a divorce may appropriate.
Women don't want to hear that, man. Women
I don't
want
care.
to hear that. Okay, two very interesting comments. I agree. And I don't care either. I fully agree. If there's cheating in a relationship, regardless of who's doing it, I always say, please consider why they were cheating. Okay, look, two comments, man. Really nice ones. Look at this one. Very interesting comment.
Listen, there's all kinds of reasons, and I'm going to say in the United States, I just don't think that's necessarily the case, and because you can walk away. Getting a divorce is easy enough. The mentally shackled, that's perspective. That's perspective. That's based on a belief system, and belief systems at the end of the day are nothing more than opinions that we have attached an emotion to. So we change opinions all the time, so we can change belief systems and values as well. And I'll just tell you, like Bushra, just like one of the things that kept April and I together, for real, straight up for real, was the fear of going to hell. Regardless of whether that's right or wrong, that's why we didn't get divorced, is because we were afraid that we would go to hell and we would have to live single the rest of our time on earth. So it wasn't like we put up with each other and we tolerated each other's poor behavior. I'm just going to come down and say that's a belief system. And listen, I mean, it's the same as people that are in abusive relationships. They don't necessarily see that they're being abused. That's up to the person, the recipient.
Bro, imagine going to hell and being again with the same person.
Well, right. No, and April and I, it's funny, we've talked about that. I'm like, do we really want to be together forever? Like,
and
for all time and eternity?
And
like,
that too in hell? Not even in heaven?
Man, I mean, in a lot of cases, we created our own hell here on earth because of the way we were treating each other and believed and acted. So,
good man, Irfan. Good point, man.
Hey, Irfan.
Not religion, but society that frames our thinking. Divorce, while halal and allowed in Islam, but not preferred.
Yeah. And listen, as far as like preferred, it's a very challenging process. In a way, you're putting yourself through a grieving process. You have to grieve the hopes and dreams that you guys had together that aren't going to come to be. The kids that are that are involved in this. It's an ugly deal. I am not an advocate of divorce like at all. I think that there are reasons for them. However, I think if two people want to work something out, they will absolutely find a way. Listen, I mean, we find ways we find ways to do stuff that's like make stuff happen that's not in our best interest at all. So if we can do that, we can easily take and find a way. I look at it like this. I think sometimes what we need to do is we need to go back and remember why we decided to share our name with each other in the first place. And even though those reasons might have changed, we have to continue to create new ones. Go ahead.
Check this out, man. Good comment. Earlier, Anila had mentioned that she got a divorce. There's an earlier comment from her. Let me see if I can find it.
What a beautiful statement. Thank you, Anila. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thank you. That's a beautiful, beautiful sentiment.
She had earlier talked about it. Well, I can't find the earlier comment. I'm still an amazing kid. Thank God I moved out with the constant torture. Difficult, not acceptable, but Allah has that. Well, difficult and not acceptable by society. It is acceptable by God. And if as a parent, you've done a good job at raising a good child, that was your real job. Yeah. Staying in a toxic relationship, nobody, nowhere does, in my understanding of the religion, God does not want you to stay in a shit relationship.
No,
so if you get out of that relationship and ended up raising a better and happier child, that's much better, man. Instead of staying in a bad relationship and raising a child poorly, that would have been more sinful than to come out of a marriage and raise a child better, because that is the future.
Yeah, and here's what I'm going to say. Khushbu, thank you so much for bringing this up. Yeah, I think I want to say, I think a lot of times, listen, if there's domestic violence going on or domestic abuse, get the F out. Like, do whatever. I'm not talking about that. To me, that's an extreme situation. That's not why most people, like, in my experience, and I'm going to speak for me, that's not in my experience why most people get divorced. There might be some of that, but that's really not this big, huge issue. I understand cultural, there are some issues, but like at the end of the day, somebody that's just a constant beater, like they're just a dick. I don't know how else to put that. That's a crime and that's a sin. I'll speak for Christianity. Regardless of whether I dislike my wife or not, I don't have the right to be physically abusive, and in fact, I'm commanded to love her. So I think we need to kind of like look at some of this and go, well, wait a minute. I think I can totally. April and I don't have to be in love, that whole romantic love thing, which I don't know, FQ, you tell me. I mean, for me, that left real quick as soon as the first bills came due, and we didn't have enough money to pay them. So
that doesn't last long, man. That doesn't last long. No. Okay, on physical abuse, I'd like to say something. Mental abuse is still a subjective where you can have a discussion whether it was or not. But physical abuse, and I'm going to say it for the benefit of many people here, is one of those flags that the moment it happens the first time, you must get the hell out of there. And the only way you will ever go back into physically abusive situation is that you have very, very deep guarantee that the abuser has understood the mistake and the circumstances somehow, I don't know how, but somehow justified to some extent that maybe it was a one-off situation. But if there's even an iota of a possibility of it repeating, you get out. Staying in a physically abusive relationship is on you, not on the abuser, but on you. I'm sorry. You cannot come back after the 5th episode and say, no, you are not the sorry creature. If you stayed there, against all odds, against any situation, you got to get out of physically abusive relationships. There is no situation where you can justify staying there.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to Ania.
This was the comment,
17 years back. Listen, Anila, I think that's amazing. And I think, and almost 20 years ago, like that's even a bigger cultural no-no, right? And so I just want to say, and this kind of goes right along to Khushbu's comment here, is that a force to stay. Khushbu, and Anila, like, here's the thing. I think at some point we all have to take and challenge cultural norms. We just do. And Anila, like, I look at you like as a hero. Good for you taking and getting your child out of that situation. Good for you. Good for you for challenging cultural norms, and good for you for doing what was best for you and your child. Kushbu, again, I think it just comes down to, like, we have to take and challenge these cultural norms and understand that I get there's cultural challenges, but it's no different than a lot of other people that have to take and pick up and move, and you sometimes have to cut ties. Is it like with your culture, with your family, and it's tough. It is absolutely tough, but sometimes it's for self-preservation. I mean, it just is. So thank you. I really, really appreciate that.
A comment just to add right there, comment, thank you, Busha, for a perfectly good comment. There you go. Staying in bad relationships, model to your children that your monstrous relationship is a norm of intimacy. It's a horrible example. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Dennis.
Yeah, no,
lovely comment, man.
I completely agree. We don't want to model that to our children. And I'm just going to also come out and say I don't think it's really correct for us to be taking some of these religious constructs that are from like 2,000 and 3,000 years old and still applying them and holding people to standards, the same as me, like within the last 40 years getting removed from a church. And I know this is still happening. And not just from the church, from a whole religion. Simply because my parents got divorced. And having that be such a taboo, that was the world rocker at that point. It was more about how the church reacted than my parents. Truthfully, I couldn't have been happier. As a kid, I'm just going to say I was ecstatic when my parents finally got divorced, because then I didn't have to like listen to all their fighting. I didn't have to and I'll just come out and say it. My mother was physically abusive, constantly. And I got sick and tired of seeing that. So did my sisters. So it was better that they took, and I'll just come out and say, according to the Bible, there was no way that the two of them could have ever gotten to heaven with a stayed in that relationship, because they were horrible human beings. So
okay,
good.
You talk about closing comment. You talk about religious constructs. Interestingly, Islam is very clear on this. You know what? You can get out. Divorces are a-okay if the ground is solid. It's not something you do casually. It is. God says it's one of the most horrible acts in the universe, but it is there. It is available, and if you feel the need or the reason for it to happen, do it. Yeah. Islam says that if in a relationship which compels you to sin, please get out of that relationship.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, kind of to follow up on one of Rafia's comments, is same shit, different country. There it is. Yeah. I completely agree. So everybody, hey, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate everybody's participation, and I appreciate your participation and your comments. Thank you so much. This isn't anything that we're going to come to a resolution on. I mean, wars have been fought over much less, right? So, at the end of the day, what I'm going to say is, those of you in marriages, if you have a difficult time navigating some challenging topics in your relationship, that's when you want to take and really give me a call. Go to my website at DennisTyrrell.com. Go to DennisTyrrell.com and connect with me, and we can continue this because this conversation. I do think that marriage. I love marriage, and I might come across a little cynical about it. I think marriage is a great thing. I think being in a relationship is a wonderful thing. I also think that a relationship can be the source of our greatest blessing and the cause of our hell here on earth. So it all depends on how we wish to take and approach it, and the perspective that we bring into it. And at the end of that, all I really want is for everybody, until we come back tomorrow, to stay safe, healthy, and blessed. Thanks.
Good night.